Welcome to the Thrive TV Show with Lauren Parsons, helping you boost your health, energy, and productivity.
Hi there, and welcome to another episode of the Thrive TV Show. I'm Lauren Parsons, your host, and today I'm joined by Kathryn Owler, Happiness at Work coach, who's tuning in from Auckland. Nice to have you here, Kathryn.
Thanks, Lauren. Lovely to be here.
So great to connect with you because today we're talking about how to enjoy any job. So Kathryn's going to share with us the secret to having fun in any job, some top tips to avoid leaving a miserable job too soon, and practical strategies for greater joy and purpose at work. So before we get into all of that, I'd love, Kathryn, just to ask you my this and that question. So are you ready?
I am.
Great. So I wanted to ask you, winter or summer?
Winter. I like wearing tights.
Staying snugly and warm in winter. Nice.
Yes.
Travel alone or travel with friends?
I like to travel with my husband if I can.
Nice. Would you visit Turkey or Greece?
Greece, I think. I've been to Turkey. I've been blessed to be already been there, so I'll try Greece.
Okay, nice. A pet pig or a pet goat?
Oh, pig. They're very cute.
Okay, nice. Chocolate or cookies?
That's a hard one. Chocolate cookies.
Okay, nice. Bit of both. Hip hop or rock? Or perhaps something else?
Probably rock. A bit more my era.
Nice. Okay. Would you rather play 10 different musical instruments beautifully or speak 10 languages fluently?
Musical instruments, I think.
Okay.
It was a dream of mine when I was a child, actually. I learned a few, but not 10.
Okay, nice. And lastly, mountainside or beachfront?
Beachfront.
Nice, wonderful.
Yeah.
So Kathryn Owler is passionate about finding ways to experience more fun and enjoyment at work. She's published academic research on the topic and is an author. Kathryn's been involved in workplace wellness for 10 years and has trained many groups of people from numerous different workplaces and industries. She's the director of the Happiness at Work coach, and her mission is to provide people who are bored, frustrated, or unhappy in their work easy to follow, empirically proven steps that they can action to achieve greater joy and purpose at work. So tell us, what is the secret to having fun in any job?
Right, yes. So I I was looking for this for many years. So I've been involved in research for many years in workplace wellness and fun in the workplace, enjoyment. But most of that was around what organizations could do to help their employees enjoy their work more. And then about 6 years ago, I had an experience myself. I actually got my dream job, and I was very, very happy, and it was just wonderful. And I was pinching myself, hoping no one was going to take it from me, that sort of thing. I realized I was an imposter. And then, so I loved it. And after about a year, you're still loving it, but realized it was quite repetitive in many ways, as jobs can be. Started to feel a little bit bored. But because I loved the job and I loved the team, I just kind of kept going. After that, though, my team experienced a series of restructures, and that was something new to me and very challenging. And what I realized after sort of 3 years of being in the role is somehow my role had turned from, my ideal, wonderful job to I was miserable. And I just didn't really know what to do about it. And so ultimately, I ended up leaving that job. But before I had finished, I'd started a piece of research with some remarkable people who had claimed to have loved or had fun at any job they've ever held. And I wanted to know their secrets. And so after I finished that job, I had a look at the research and really distilled their secrets. And for me, what I found was it really boiled down to something quite simple in a way, which was that they all appeared to have really quite a hopeful, optimistic outlook. And that meant that they believed there was always something that could be done when they had a challenge to their work happiness.
That so mirrors, all of the research around positive psychology, doesn't it? Just reminds me of those keys to building optimism. I really love the work of Sean Aker, for example, and in his TED Talk, he talks about the happy secret to better work. It's one of my favorite, it's actually my most favorite TED Talk of all times. And he talks about how we can actually take steps to build our optimism. We understand that the brain is plastic, it has this neuroplasticity, and that we can actually train ourselves to be more optimistic. So that's really interesting to me. That is the key. Having fun in your job is being hopeful and boosting optimism. So I know I'm putting you on the spot, but do you have some keys to help people actually do that? Like, how do people boost their personal optimism?
Yes, well, I think that when we are, in my own experience, and also when I've worked with people who are struggling in terms of their work happiness, we often feel stuck. We can feel very stuck because not powerless. Sorry, because we often, I guess, naturally see power as something held in a workplace by people above us, perhaps, managers and so forth. And so what I aim to encourage people to do is to become a little bit unstuck by seeing other possibilities, really.
So do you mean within their job, or do you mean to look at perhaps moving on to a new job?
So I think, first off, I would always suggest we look at the situation that we're in. When I was in that situation that I described, where I was feeling really miserable and I felt stuck, I really didn't know what to do. I kind of had a sense that there was something I could do, but I didn't really know, and I was looking around for some kind of guidance. I think that probably what is key, and what a lot of us don't do, is just to actually stop. I think that's the first step. So perhaps before we jump to, I need to be more positive, is to actually stop and allow ourselves to feel how we're feeling and acknowledge how we're feeling.
Yeah, 100% agree. Yeah.
Yes, so that would be, I think, the first step. Actually, I think a lot of us do aim to try and be optimistic. And one of the things that we often do is, when things aren't going so well in life, in work, we think, well, I'll just think positive, I'll just forge ahead, and maybe things will get better. And we might be doing that for the right intentions, because we want to be optimistic. We want to do the best for ourselves and our team and so forth. But unless we actually stop first, I think, pause and acknowledge how we're feeling, and actually examine why we're feeling that way, why we're feeling miserable, unhappy, bored, whatever it might be, it then becomes it's a bit hard for us to move, to actually, we want to understand ourselves, we want to understand what's going on first, I think. And I think the people in my research were quite good at doing that pause, really. I think that's the thing, to really stop and pause.
And that sounds like one of these tips that I know you're going to share around how to avoid leaving a miserable job too soon. So I'm assuming that, pausing and checking with how you feel will be one of those first steps. Then what can people do next?
Yes, I think that, that's definitely right, that pausing if we're in a job, because it can be our tendency when we're miserable, as I say, we're feeling powerless, we don't know what to do, is to think, okay, I've got to get another job, got to get out of here. And we've probably all been there. And I think what I would encourage people to do is to, ideally, it doesn't mean we have to stay in that job or the organisation or even that profession forever, but what I would encourage people to do would be to think about how they could be proactive in the current situation rather than reactive. And I think when I left that job a few years back, I was being reactive. I didn't know what to do, and I just wanted to escape the misery. And of course, it goes away for a while. But what I would suggest is that we can be happier in any job potentially we don't need everything to be perfect. And even if it is perfect, as I described, things will change over time. You know, things change, new managers come on or whatever, you know, so really aim to find ways to be proactive in our current situation.
And what comes to mind is it just reminds me of something I've been talking about a lot lately as we're recording this. It's been the latest resurgence lockdown in New Zealand. So everyone's facing this heightened level of uncertainty. Of course, uncertainty is part of life. But one of the keys to that springs to mind is, you know, focusing on what you can control, because there's always certain things that are within your control, and then there's a whole lot of things outside of that. And we can waste a lot of emotional energy, can't we, if we're focusing on the things we can't control. So thinking, what are the things that we can shift in terms of the way we show up at work, or the way we interact with others, or where we put our time and attention. So I don't know if that fits in with some of the things that you often share around. You said you had some strategies to really boost our joy at work.
Yeah, no, I mean, I really like what you said there. And I think particularly in situations when there is high stress and we're anxious, it's really important for us to be able to think about what we know now that we can do. So there's so much that's uncertain, as you say. For example, in New Zealand at the moment, the resurgence of COVID. So there's so much that's uncertain in life and in our work, and I think accepting that. But we don't need to know an awful lot to proceed, but we need to know enough. And just in that sense, we get a little bit of control. So it might be just what we do at work today. What's our plan for today? I know enough to, 1, 2, 3 things. And that's enough. And that can help to reduce our stress, because, as you say, it gives that a little bit of sense of control in a situation when we actually, there's a lot we don't know. Yes. Yeah.
And I think that's so common in life, isn't it? That's uncertainty is part of life.
Yes, that's right.
So for people listening in that are after, those practical strategies, what are the things that you recommend to people that are going to help them boost their personal joy?
Yes. So there's a lot of things. So what I encourage people to do initially is, as I said earlier, is pause and think about, what is bothering us, what's going on, I work with people to find ways to identify what are their current priorities for enjoying their work. So and a lot of that emerges out of the current challenges. And when I say priorities, another word for that can be values. Now, we have a lot of values as people. When we, that sometimes they have a higher priority in our lives than other times, as I see it. And if we are undergoing some sort of challenge to our workplace happiness, we're frustrated, we're bored, we are worried, whatever it might be, I believe it'll be because there's some our values have been compromised in some way, an important value at that time. So having a think about that is a kind of a start where I start with people in terms of coaching. And I'll give you an example from some of the research that I did about how we might then find ways to align that priority with what's going on in our current work. So one of the women that I interviewed for my research, she was in a role that wasn't her chosen profession. She was cleaning. She was cleaning very nice mansions, but it wasn't her chosen profession. And she, in particular, didn't like cleaning showers. That was, yeah. And but she remembered something that her mother always used to say to her when she was growing up, which is a job's not worth doing unless you do it well. I don't know if you've heard that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes, my mother used to say that to me. It used to drive me mad, but yeah. So that was a value that this particular woman held, that had been obviously a long held value. And so when she scrubbed those showers, she would scrub them better than anyone could scrub them, And so for her, that quality of her work really helped to enhance the enjoyment in a role that wasn't necessarily her chosen role. And I guess that's part of when I say to people to be proactive in their current jobs, it's sometimes we might be in jobs that we haven't chosen, or we're hoping for something else in the future, but we're at work a lot of the time. How can we improve our enjoyment now?
Absolutely. And again, this just reminds me of, I think of Martin Seligman, who's known as the founding father of positive psychology. He has that PERMA model that you may be familiar with, and the P stands for purpose, having that sense of purpose in everything that we do. And it just reminds me of that anecdote of, someone came up to one of the cleaners at NASA and said, "Oh, so what is it that you do here? You're just a cleaner, are you?" And that the cleaner turned around and said, "I'm helping put a man on the moon." And so,
Yes.
and I think from an organizational point of view, for leaders, if they can get all of their team members to really be engaged and understand, this is what I'm doing, I'm helping create, spread this positive ripple in the world, which is why I always start with leaders by asking, what is it that you actually do? What's the purpose of your organization to be there? And I think as individuals, if we can tap into that and understand that, yes, sometimes the things that we do are just repetitive. Maybe it's the data entry, maybe it's the tidying up, maybe it's the filing, whatever it is. But to realize as a whole, what are you contributing to that's greater? Because we all need to have that sense of purpose and contributing something greater than ourselves, don't we? So I like that. That idea of bringing that to the forefront.
Yes. And I think, purpose is an interesting one, because often, because I'm in the business of thinking about how we can learn to love our jobs, something that is often said is that find the job you love and you won't feel like you've worked a day in your life, or that sort of thing, or find what is your passion. And I am in two minds about that. Because I have a sister who's always known what she wanted to do, and she was in architecture and used to build little houses when she was a child. We knew what she wanted to do, and she's moved into that area. That was always her passion, and she does love it. But she has challenging days, and she's had challenging places that she's worked, And on the other hand, we might be in a role that isn't our chosen role, but we can find ways, as I said before, perhaps to align it with our values. But another key approach that I use, and I've found to be very important myself over the years, which is probably for me even more important than what my sort of passion are the things that I guess are my sweet spots in terms of the tasks that I love to do. And when I look back over my career, which has been, worked in a number of different roles, I don't know, I've done music teaching when I was younger, I've done some social work, I've done research training, a whole bunch of different roles. For me, there are three tasks that are recurrent in terms of the tasks that I enjoy. And those for me are mentoring, facilitation, and writing. Now that's just me. But so those, for me, I can do those in many different ways, in many different contexts, in many different industries. And if I was to be in a role that wasn't necessarily something I had chosen, I would find ways to, though, if I was able to find ways to do those things, then that would help to give me some purpose. And because that's the things that I love to do. So that is something that I do with my clients. It's an exercise that they love, thinking about what are those things that are their sweet spots, and how can they perhaps integrate those perhaps more. And I think sometimes that's the thing, it's about a balance. We don't have to be doing them all the time, but if we can integrate them at least sometime into our work, then that can really help.
Absolutely. It's really interesting. I'm just reflecting personally that my husband is looking at changing from being part of a very large organization and in a senior leadership role where he's essentially at a desk and at a computer a lot of the time, to moving into an outdoors, very physical, labor focused role. And it's something that he's realized it's just such a different way of structuring the day. There's a lot less mental load and there's a lot more physical load, which has a whole lot of follow on. And it's just been interesting seeing him step into that and lean into that, because I guess you don't know what it's going to feel like until you do it. But it just reminds me of the fact that he loves being outdoors and doing sort of outdoor things on our property, for example. But it does make me wonder, is he going to get a bit sick of it if he's actually doing that as his full time? Is he going to actually enjoy that so much on the weekends if it's similar sort of a routine? And so I guess it's finding that balance, isn't it? Finding something that we can enjoy and find joy in and find purpose in our work, and to balance that out with things that we love doing at other times in our life as well, not necessarily always 24/7.
Yes. Good point. It sounds like you might have to be out in the garden a bit more.
Yeah, well, I love being out in the garden.
Yes, no, that's a very good point. And I think, it's really good to identify those things. And sometimes when I do this exercise with people, it actually will be the things outside of work that recur for them as being kind of their sweet spot activities. And I mean, I recall one of the women I worked with, she was a midwife, and she loved it. Well, she enjoyed her job, but actually the things she really loved to do was crafting in the weekend and sharing that and giving those, gifts to people. And so if she was able to do that and carve that time and space for herself to do that in the weekend, that created a really good balance for her, and she was able to feel a lot more content in her work. So it's a really good point you make. And I think the other thing is too, there is sometimes we are in the work that we're in, we have to do a lot of things that perhaps we don't necessarily want to do as part of our role. And so being able to integrate some of those sweet spot activities, even just, it might even be just 10 minutes at the beginning of the day or something, I find is very grounding. Because they're activities that both challenge us, but we feel competent in. I think that's key. That's one thing. I don't know if you listen to, it's an episode that's about to come out, but will be out when this is live, and that's my interview with Kate Watkinson talking about morning routines. And what if you could take your favorite activity and you just actually do 20 minutes of it in the morning before you start into your day, which to a lot of people, they've never really thought of doing that. It might be that you sit and you do your crochet or whatever it is, or maybe it's video gaming, or maybe it's gardening. I had one client once who loved walking on the lawn barefoot and just grounding in nature. Wow. But she found that she just never really did it. And so she set up a strategy at the start of the day while the kettle was boiling, just to walk to the back fence, touch the hydrangeas, and then walk back in again. So it only took about 20 seconds out of her day, but it was just something that then got her in the mood, or got her in the right mindset for the day, essentially, by literally physically grounding herself, made her really present. And it just gave her more confidence to step into her day at work, where there was a lot going on at the time. I think that sounds wonderful. Yes, and I think it is really great to be able to understand those things that really give us that sense of grounding, as you say. And I think, yes, those routines can be prior to work. I mean, people in the research that I talked to, I remember one of the women, she talked about the importance of meditation for her, and that was a big part of how she set up her day. So it can be before work. It can also be in work. It could be work related. I was thinking of one of the women that I coached. She was in a role that for her, she'd been in for quite some time, and sometimes felt she knew it. And so finding a little bit of challenge was part of what she was looking into. And part of the reason that she kept the role was it was good for her family and school hours and all those sorts of things. So what she decided to do was to make sure she started the day carving out a bit of time for herself, because she was in a role with a lot of people coming to her all the time, asking for things. And so she carved out a period of time in the morning when it was quiet, when there weren't that many people there, to do part of projects that she really gained satisfaction from, really grounded her, were a bit challenging, were a bit interesting, and that kind of allowed her to feel okay about the rest of the day. People coming, interrupting all the time and that sort of thing.
Yes.
Yeah, because she had, that was hers, and I've used that a lot as well over my career, that used those activities in that way. Often for me it's writing, starting the day with a bit of writing, even if it's just 10 minutes.
That's great. Yeah, and I think the way that you plan and structure your day is really key, because like you say, there's always going to be things that we love more and love less about our roles. I think it's very seldom that everything's just flatlining, so it's making sure there's a balance, I guess, in your day and your week as well. So tell me, I know you've mentioned a few times the interviews that you've done as part of your research. What are the things that stand out the most, or is there anything in particular that really stood out to you as you did your research that surprised you perhaps, or that was just something interesting that you discovered?
Well, I guess I was interested in the people I interviewed. They ranged from people in their 30s to people in their 60s. So there's a whole bunch of expertise, experience, and life experience. And I guess I sort of thought that maybe they would be, particularly as positivity and so forth came across as something that they all really believed in, would be sort of really outgoing types, or kind of the jokey ones in the office, or something like that. I'm not quite sure why, but it was just interesting that it was, it's personalities across the board, and I think that's kind of encouraging for us, because we don't all have to be extroverts to have fun at work and enjoy our work. And it's just across the board really. And yes, there were in the sample, there was one person who saw himself as the kind of funny guy in the office, and that he saw that it's a very important role. He was a team leader in an engineering workshop, and so he saw that as a very important way of helping particularly the younger people in the workshop relax and be able to feel open and come to him to talk if they had issues or upset, whatever. He felt kindness was a really key value and practice for him. So he certainly saw that to be his role, but others not necessarily. Some, I got the impression that people could be quite loners in a sense, very autonomous. I mean, not so much loners, but very autonomous workers. That said, everybody emphasised the value in good communication, good relationships with their peers,
yes,
and
absolutely.
practice those communication skills. Yeah. So anyway, so that encouraged me. You don't have to be a laugh a minute sort of person. You can be, but we can all be positive and hopeful and enjoy our work more.
Fantastic. And I think it's that the way that we define happiness or joy, sometimes we think of it as being huge and outward, but actually it can be that deep sense of contentment, that just perhaps having a little bit of quiet time to yourself, or having your hot cuppa, or whatever it is. Yeah, I think right across the spectrum that we can find those moments of joy when we look for them. So thank you so much. There's just so much more we could share, I'm sure, around how to find joy in your job. So if people wanted to find out more or to touch base with you, how can they do that, Kathryn?
Well, I have a free PDF available for people on my website, which I've identified 3 key steps to enjoying any job more. So if you want to check that out, my website's www.happinessatworkcoach.com. So happinessatworkcoach.com.
Fantastic. And the links are all down below as well. So if you're listening into this as a podcast, just head to the website and check out thrivetvshow.com, and all of the links to Kathryn are down in the show notes down below. So thanks so much for your time and joining us today. Just love to ask you as a final question, if there's one final thing you could share with our listeners, what would it be, Kathryn?
Well, I would just encourage you all to feel hopeful. If you are currently encountering challenges at work, and we all do from time to time, whether they're small or bigger, feel empowered. There's always something we can do, and there are loads of practical strategies. I've shared a few, but there's a lot more. And it, as I think Lauren said, whether it's getting yourself a cup of tea and having a break, or maybe it's thinking through a challenge a lot, that's a lot more complex and finding ways to communicate that to management and so forth. Small and large ways there are small and large ways we can all, things we can all do to, just improve our situation. So be hopeful.
Fantastic. That's a lovely note to end on. So thank you so much, Kathryn, for your time. Thank you to everyone for listening in. That's been another episode of the Thrive TV show. Go out and thrive.
Thank you for listening to the Thrive TV show with Lauren Parsons. Visit thrivetvshow.com to access the show notes and discover our fantastic bonus content. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next inspiring episode.